So, as the entire NBA fan base is aware, the Chicago Bulls made the biggest trade at this year's NBA trade deadline, acquiring Nikola Vucevic for Wendell Carter Jr. and 2 top 4 protected first-round picks in 2021 and 2023. However, a team that was once pretty close to the 8th seed and was pretty much seen as one of the teams that would definitely be threats to be in the playoffs are now struggling pretty heavily. They're 4-9 since acquiring Vooch, and they've lost 5 in a row before their win against Cleveland on April 17th. Not to mention, Zach LaVine is going to miss, quote, the next several games. So, as you can imagine, under every Chicago Bulls anything on social media, there are plenty of people freaking out, saying Chicago shouldn't have made the trade, they gave up too much. Anything you can imagine, it's probably been said. But this is my message to Bulls fans as well as non-Bulls fans. They're going to be just fine. Zach LaVine is under contract until next year, when I imagine he'll command a near-max contract, but still, even then, you'll have retained your best player. And I'm not sure if a lot of you know this, but Vucevic is not making a lot of money. He's making $26 million this year, $24 million next year, and $22 million in the 2023-2024 season. You're seeing role players make this type of money now. And this is an all-star caliber player we're talking about here. I will address the concerns people are talking about first. One of them is that LaVine and Vooch are a negative while on the court together. And to that I have to say, first of all, there aren't that many lineups that have a substantial amount of minutes together that are positive for the Bulls anyway. I mean, the lineups, the two-man lineups anyway, that have the most minutes are all negative. Vooch and Patrick Williams, Vooch and LaVine, LaVine and Williams. All negative. The only positive one that has a decent amount of minutes is the Thaddeus Young LaVine two-man lineup, which is 0.9. That's because the Bulls are 10 games under 500. It's rare for losing teams to have many lineups with a substantial amount of playing time to be positive. But let's also take into account that this lineup has only played 245 minutes in 10 games, which is a decent amount, I guess, but that's the amount of time they've had to gel and build chemistry. In a season where there's barely practice time, LaVine has played injured for a portion of these games. They just have to go out there and play. LaVine has been vocal about wanting to play with a really good big such as Vooch, and you can tell that he wants to involve Vucevic. It's just a matter of finding balance between being the ridiculous scorer that he is and keeping his teammates involved. That is hard for any player to do when you rarely get time outside of real NBA games that matter to build chemistry. So I'm not worried about the fit at all, because while Vucevic can dominate an offense at times when he's needed, he is a guy who can just get his within the flow of an offense. I mean, it is really amazing to me how effortless the offense flows through him. I talked about how he fits really with the Bulls already in a video like a month ago when they actually traded for him, so I won't talk about it that much here. Also because I don't watch a ton of Bulls games, just enough to keep tabs really. So the point of all that is to say that the Bulls' 2 best players have played like 245 minutes together, and that's the time they've had to gel. And if you're expecting to see amazing results in that amount of time, it's just not going to happen. But the biggest reason this team is not succeeding to the level many had hoped is not because of their 2 best players. It's an awful supporting cast. Kobe White and Lauri Markkanen have kind of sucked, and Satoransky is a fine point guard for limited bench minutes. But if he's your best playmaker, you're going to have issues, especially if he's your starter. Daniel Tice has been good, Troy Brown Jr. has potential, but overall this team is just not ready yet. They need a real point guard, a playmaker, somebody who can play defense. I mean, the obvious guy is Lonzo Ball because he's been rumored pretty heavily, and that would be such a good fit, especially if his shooting persists. But let's say they aren't comfortable offering over $20 million annually, or the Pelicans match whatever offer they give. I think if they could pry Mike Conley away from the Jazz, that'd be a fantastic fit. It would probably be easier for Conley with Vooch, considering that will be more like what Marc Gasol was than what Gobert is. There's Kyle Lowry, but he'll likely command a pretty big contract, and will probably either stay with the Raptors or sign to some contender. Same situation probably with Mike Conley. Goran Dragic wouldn't be a bad fit. Dennis Schroeder would be good if he can realize that he's not worth $20 million. Spencer Dinwiddie? I mean, there's quite a few options, it seems, in free agency, but they won't be the only suitors for those guys, so we'll just have to see what happens in the offseason. Oh, TJ McConnell too. He'd be a fantastic bench point guard, maybe even starting for them. But I want my Hawks to get him, so the Bulls can't have him. But outside of the point guard thing, the whole roster still needs a lot of work. I think the game that'll tell you this the most is the game against the Hawks where Zach LaVine almost dropped 50, and they still lost. They need somebody to run the bench. If Kobe White can be a consistent bench scorer and they can get someone to play make off the bench, that'd be cool. Because Troy Brown Jr. has a lot of two-way potential to me still. He's a good playmaker, he's a good defender, and if the shot can come through, he'll be a really good wing to have that you could even insert into the starting lineup if things go well enough. Daniel Tice is one of the best backup fives in the league, and they still have Thaddeus Young too. But Patrick Williams needs to develop, and they need a point guard really, really bad. But outside of that, I don't think this team is that bad if a few things go right for them and if a few players go in the right direction. The one thing that's pretty dicey is if they lose this draft pick and don't make the playoffs this year. That'll look pretty bad for them in what's considered a stacked draft class. So we'll see what happens with that. Maybe they'll win the lottery or jump into the top 4. Who knows? But Bulls fans, non-Bulls fans, you can stop freaking out. It hasn't even been 15 games with these two guys yet. Give them some time to figure it out.